Hi everyone, welcome to a Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. This one's a little bit different this week. We've had to pre-record it because I'm not available for the live show, which this will go live on the normal Sunday Social time of 7:30 Eastern. But there will be somebody watching the comments. So if you've got any comments, we'll hopefully have somebody replying to you. But this is a pre-recorded show, so we won't be able to respond to any comments. But we very much appreciate you watching. I'm joined by my panel. I'm joined by Jason from Watch Rolling.
Hello.
Joined by our Seiko chronograph expert, Todd.
Hello.
And joined by Pete from Not So Obvious Watches. Thanks everyone for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This week we're going to talk about resources for new watch collectors, so books and websites and things like that. So whether you're a new watch collector or an existing watch collector, hopefully you'll find something interesting about this, and then let us know in the comments down below if there's any that we've missed or any interesting ones that you want, and then I'll add them to the description. Well, should we do a wristwatch check then? Pete, do you want to start with do you want to start us off with the wristwatch check?
Yeah, I'm terrible at these. Hopefully it works. It is no.
Oh, nearly. Yeah.
A Jaguar Cult Master Compressor Diver GMT.
Oh,
Ooh.
I know this watch. My boss at work has the titanium version that I think they made as a Navy SEALs limited edition. With the
I don't have that one.
Well, I think it's a Memovox as well. I think it has the alarm on it as well.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't have that one either.
It's such an interesting design that if you didn't see Jaeger LeCoultre on the dial, you wouldn't immediately think it was that, because it's
I've just done a review on this. I've just put it up on my channel, and this is the way I describe it. It's what happens when a homeschool kid first leaves home and goes to spring break. That's what happens whenever JLC tries to do a diver. They just go a little bit crazy, and the parents just pretend they can't see it. It doesn't look like anything else they do.
Oh, awesome! Well, Todd, what are you wearing?
It's a little bit easier to take it off. So this is.
There
we go. Yeah, it works. It works better. This is true to form, a Seiko 6139 chronograph. I think this is a 7002. Let me just double check here. 7012.
Oh, nice.
And so, this is one of my speed timers. It's all original, and it's the only one I have on a strap.
Oh, yeah.
Because I haven't found the right bracelet, the original bracelet for it, but it works really well, and it's a fun watch, definitely.
Awesome. Jason, you look like you're ready. What you wearing?
Oh, I thought I was ready, but I guess I'm not. I'm wearing my helm, Vanuatu.
Oh yeah,
the stainless steel one with this kick butt engineer bracelet. Oh,
I like that bracelet.
So yeah, this watch is awesome, man. It's our buddy Jody always talks about. It's like the best one you can get, but it's really, I mean, if you want something built really tough and it's awesome. But full disclosure, this is officially on the chopping block. One of my friends is interested, and I'm going to give him first shot. And if he doesn't want it, then I'm going to put it on the open market, because, like I said, I'm paring down my collection, and I want to get to 4 or 5 really, really, really nice pieces. And this is one of the ones I gave some thought to, but it's a great watch. And I got boxing papers and everything if anyone is ever interested.
And I'll go next. So I'm wearing my Christopher Ward, my C60 Trident Pro 600. I'm wearing it because I got the opportunity to interview Mike France again this week. I can't talk too much about the watch because it's under embargo, but I think there's something quite exciting coming for Christopher Ward, which I believe is going to be, it's a couple of weeks out to release, but they've been just doing some amazing things recently with the brightly colored dials, the 36mm Sealanders and so on. So yeah, definitely been giving some love to my Christopher Ward this week, but next week at the conference it'll be all about the Rolex Date Just Start conference I'm going to. Well, shall we kick this off with interesting resources for new watch collectors? I am going to very sneakily plug my Amazon store. I've never. I don't think I've ever plugged this on the channel before. The link's always in there, but the channel's had an Amazon store for quite a while, and I add interesting resources in there in the books and films section. So if you're interested, if we mention any books today and they're not in there, then I'll add them to here. But there's some really interesting. I've also added some films in, so we've got 3 Days of the Condor there, which is a must for any of you Doxa fans. And the Robert Redford All Is Lost, which is a must for any of you SKX fans. And then, of course, we've got the Birds of the West Indies, which is how Ian Fleming got James Bond's name from, and so on. So there's lots of interesting resources there. It's normal Amazon; you don't pay anymore, but it obviously it helps the channel out because it's these are affiliate links. So that was my little plug. But first, who wants to go first? Todd, do you want to go first on one of yours?
Sure. We can go ahead and do it if you want to. We'll do the Seiko Citizen Watch Forum. And so, as my esteemed colleagues mentioned when we were going over these ahead of time here, sometimes going to the forums can be, I don't know, a little risky for somebody who's just getting into the hobby, just because sometimes the forums aren't very, let's say, friendly, or they may be a little demanding. But a bunch of folks are really great. And so if you're interested at all in mostly Japanese watches, obviously with this, but I mean, it also specializes primarily on Seiko and Citizen. You can just learn a ton of things about, the mark itself. Grand Seiko's on this a lot. And, it's just a really great resource just to go through the history. It's like if you want to understand, like, let's say Seiko speed timers, you can go and look up 6139 or Seiko speed timer, and you can see all the different threads on it. And you can join and you can ask questions. And we even have a section on it for, new, folks that have just joined, like newbies. And you can introduce yourself and start posting pictures. And the really great thing about the forums, especially once you get involved, is that if you're looking to buy a watch, let's say you want to buy like your first SKX, which is a great one if you want something more vintage, or you want to ask questions about like a new Seiko release, like a new SARB or something like that, you can go on that and find out what people's experience is. Or you can go to the marketplace and you can see, there'll be really good, legitimate watches being sold on the marketplace. So just in terms of being online, I think that's really good. I also belong to the Omega forums. Those are really good in general. Some forums aren't, and you can judge that by just going and taking a look. But I recommend, if you're interested, especially in a specific make, like Sam, you like Rolex. Now, Rolex is a little tricky because sometimes the owners of Rolex aren't necessarily inviting all the time, some of the forums, but you can go on some of the Rolex forums. In fact, I believe it's been who recommended doing that in general, but it's go take a look at the different Rolex forums, for example, and find one that you like if you want to learn more about Rolex, for example. So that's anyhow. I recommend taking a look.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I'm definitely guilty of not often going on forums. I go on Facebook groups, but I definitely think I need to branch out onto the forums, because you're right, there's some very, very knowledgeable people on forums, because the forums have been around a lot longer than a lot of the social
Right.
media.
They really predate most of the social media sites. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Nice.
Well, Pete, I might go to one of yours next. You've got Two Broke Watch Snobs, which is a podcast.
Yeah, a podcast and a website. And judging from the laugh, a few people have heard of them. So this is Kaz and Mike. And one of the things I like about them is, one, I see some of kind of my way of looking at watches reflected back at me, and who doesn't like to see themselves reflected back? But they tread this really fine line between understanding what watches are, that they're luxuries, they're a little bit silly, that we spend too much money on them, but at the same time, we care deeply about them and we take them seriously and we care about what's going on. And so they're kind of able to be both realistic about watches and what's value and what's not, whilst not getting cynical about it. And it's a great place for people that are just coming into the hobby to sort of learn about affordable watches and how you can enjoy them, whilst at the same time, a lot of people in that affordable space go, and of course you're an idiot and you're stupid and you're falling for the marketing if you go up. These guys are much better at saying, and of course you may well want to spend more money, and if you do, just keep on going. And they'll talk about that. And it's I always find it refreshing to see someone who's realistic about the market and the brands and the marketing, but not cynical about it. And they're a bit irreverent. And if you're the sort of person who doesn't like a bit of swearing, you're not going to like Kaz very much. But I think they're a great place for a new person coming in to get a sense about how they can approach this hobby. And yeah, just don't ask Kaz if that Raketa Big Zero you saw on eBay is real or not, because he's probably over that question. But I highly recommend both the podcast and the website.
Yeah, and I know their podcast is one of the biggest now, certainly top 5 or certainly top 10, judging on what I've learned about other podcasts as well on the way. Well, Jason, do you want to go to your next one, which is the playlist from Long Island Watches, I believe.
I know that this was picked by a couple of us, and I just drew first, but so this is just a watch and learn playlist from Long Island Watch. So Mark Frankel is the gentleman's name. I've never met him, never talked to him, but he was one of the first channels I ran across, and I noticed that he had this whole playlist of videos to teach you about watches, and I'm telling you, man, if you don't understand learning styles and the visual learners and all that stuff, and it's just great because the very first video in this series is basically just some watch basics, and then the second one is how to do about watch movements, and then I picked a couple other ones. I just featured him in my podcast as one of the resources, and all three of the resources, actually, shameless plug, that I mentioned today are in my latest episode of my podcast, which you can find at the watchrolling.com podcast on Spotify and all other available media outlets. But I just think that if you are interested, you want to kill a little bit of time, full disclosure, Mark has his own store, but Mark has had a store online since like 2003 in some way, shape, or form. He was an aerospace engineer. For any of us that are involved in any kind of industry, like, the guy understands the actual engineering behind the timepieces. And I honestly feel like in the videos, if he shows watches that he's teaching you about, he's not like trying to sell you that watch. He's able to separate that this may be a watch that's in my store or something like that, but it's probably one of his watches, because he has like, I can't remember, he did a video like 200 watches or something, but it's just like, it's really quick. Some of the videos are a little bit longer, like 15, 20 minutes, but I think the amount of detail he goes into warrants that. You know what I mean? He's really teaching you about the watch. I learned how the spring drive movement worked from him, and then I was able to find some more resources. It's just a great, he's how can I say it? For anyone that's ever been in a schoolhouse, you can really learn from him, but he's not boring. He's not monotone. He's good inflection. He pulls a bunch of personal experience into his stories. You get some great anecdotes and stuff like that. So he just does a really, really good job of explaining it. And he doesn't teach the engineering or science part of the timepiece over your head. Like, he's just a natural at kind of explaining everything to where I feel like everyone can get it. And as a guy who had to teach people how to de-smoke fires on board a ship, you have to really learn how to keep people from falling asleep in that lesson, because people really aren't interested. So Mark just does a great job, and it's free. That's the most important thing, I think, that for a newer watch collector, is just, it's free, so I highly recommend it.
Yeah, Mark's been on the channel before. Great guy. He's always welcome on our channel. And yeah, I think I love those videos. One of the ones that I think people should definitely watch is, he did one on what is the size of a watch, and he takes different sizes of watches and he wears them. So he has one I think he uses marathon watches. So there's one that's like 46 mil and then one that's 36 mil, and he wears them on his wrist and says, look, it's not all to do with the case size, it's how the watch wears. And it's a really interesting perspective on that, I think.
Yeah. Great channel.
Okay, well then I'll go next. I really like this guy. This is the watch repair channel, and essentially this guy is a watch restorer or a watchmaker. He actually runs a course that you can sign up to, but he essentially goes through all of these restoration videos where he'll restore old watches. So he's restoring and they're not all Rolex that he restores, but his detail on this, and he's got a very, it's similar to Mark at Long Island Watches in terms of his presentation style. He's got a very nice, more of a soothing presentation style, and he knows the name of each component. So if you're really getting into mechanical watches and you're interested in seeing how watches are serviced, what happened, he does a lot with watches that are damaged by water and how you repair them, and he takes through every single component of the mechanical watch. It's absolutely fascinating. In fact, I know Mike at my work, I think, has signed up and done his course. I think he does a specific watchmaker's course as well, which isn't very expensive either, I don't think, in terms of the value that you're getting. But all of his YouTube stuff is free, and it's a fantastic look into mechanical watches and how they're made and how they're repaired. And if you're interested in learning about the different components, has anyone else watched this channel?
I've never seen it, but I'm going to now.
Yeah, there's a nice ASMR kind of approach. You can just sort of have it playing in the background and watch it. So yes, I use it that way a little. Yeah,
it's fascinating, and his camera is. He's obviously got some decent lenses for his camera as well. So you can, as you can see here, they're really nice close-up shots. Okay, so we're back to Todd. The next one you've got here is the Naked Watchmaker, which I won't put in the
Watchmaker. Yes, and he's been around a long time. I'm looking over here. Yeah, you're going down. So he recently did a I guess a collaboration with Frederic Constant on a kind of a skeletonized version of a watch. But you can see there's different things. The that you can right there. He does a lot. He's a master watchmaker, and so maybe this isn't necessarily just for like a new person, but I think it really gives you a broad spectrum of, what is, like if you want to see a Breguet or a Breitling, when he did deconstructed that, similar to the one you just talked about, Sam, too. And he has master watchmaking classes, and it's just really well produced, and it's really, really great histories on the marks, different brands and that sort of thing. And he's got a rather nice grouping of journalists and other folks that write content with him, and it's just a really well produced, very knowledgeable excuse me, founder. Man, my voice just went. Terry Gasquet. I'm not going to say his name right because it's French. It's Terry Gasquet, probably is how you would pronounce it, but just a really great resource. One of, again, many. Sam brought up one, and Jason brought up one too already. But it's if you get a different perspective, very European in perspective too, which I appreciate. Where he's coming from with that. But anyhow, you can see, like you brought up the history of Breitling. Just really great content on a lot of it because he's been around a while.
Man, the Navy timer is beautiful.
Isn't it?
Beautiful, man. I was just staring at those pictures like, oh, man. Yeah. I subscribe to his channel now, too. Thank you.
Pete, your next one, I believe, is a book, is it?
Yes. So The Magic of Watches by Louis Nardin. I don't know if he's any relationship to like the Nardin family, Ulysse Nardin, but I don't know. But
I-
this is a very simple. It's about 200 pages. It's not a massive book, but it just walks you through a lot of the things that you will hear people say. So it really treads a nice line between it's very beginner friendly, but it's some of what's in it is quite advanced. So if you've ever wondered like what's the difference between an arrow hand and a sword hand and a cathedral hands, they walk you through the different types of hands.
Yeah.
You hear people talk about it's a tonneau case versus a square case versus a rectangular case. He walks you through, well, this is when people are talking about the different case shapes. This is where they come from. This is what they mean. I think it's an excellent primer to have sort of sitting next to you when you're watching anyone else and they talk about, well, what's a Breguet numeral, or they talk about this kind of case treatment. 9 times out of 10, there'll be a little paragraph in there that'll explain to you what that person just said. So I just think if you tried to start at the front and work your way to the back, it'd be a bit dry. But if you use it to like dip in, read the thing you need, and dip back out again, it's really 55 odd bucks well spent.
Yeah. I have this book, and so at work, everyone knows I'm into watches now, so they always come up to me, and I have a copy strictly at my desk. So now when they ask me questions, I'm like, here, read this when you take a break, and I'll tell anyone that's military, retired, or whatever. It's the most esoteric little tech manual you've ever seen in your life. Like, so in tech manuals, most of the time, like you have stuff for specific items or whatever, but there is a tech manual to govern all tech manuals. Most people don't know that. And it's a book that lists all the other books. I feel like this is kind of like that. It doesn't really list other books, but it's strangely beautiful, Pete.
It's interesting in that you're absolutely right. It's a tech manual. Imagine a tech manual written by someone who genuinely loves the product they're writing about.
Yes.
It's like an engine overhaul manual for a Chevy small block by someone who loves Chevy small blocks. It is. There is a whole section where he talks about like the magic and the beauty of watches as well.
Yeah, it's just I did read it front to back, and it expanded my mind so much about watch collecting that I had to put it down for about a month, and then I went back and read it again because I will just say, I mean, I'm not affiliated. I mean, I probably should have an Amazon store at this point, but it gives you something new every single time you read it. And the more you learn outside of this book, and then when you go back to this book, you see this book in a much different way. It is, and it's small. It's only like maybe like this big or whatever, my hands. You could, yeah. Oh, you had the big one. I got
No, it's the small one, but
okay, yeah.
I'm just holding it close.
Yeah. I was like, geez, that thing's huge. But it's just, you could carry it around with you. That's why I keep it at my desk. I keep it right next to me, and it's just and the font. I'm gonna tell you, man, like it's almost like a Bauhausy font. I wish I should have looked at the font. I don't know what the heck it is, if it's Arial or something, but it's like the contrast on the Yeah.
I think it's a type of Helvetica, but it's a very modern kind of looking font.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The whole book's beautiful.
This is the first on me. I've never heard of this book.
I'm gonna get that one.
Yeah, it looks awesome. Well, Jason, next one we'll go to is a book from you actually, or an annual.
Books. Yeah. So this is the wristwatch annual. This is from this year. I got a copy right here. This is not small. I have a 7 5/8 inch fitted head. So I don't know what that is overseas, but it's giant. So this is the book in my head for reference. So anyways, I saw the 2021 being advertised, and I picked it up. And this thing is, I would say it's a very literal entry level. If a tech manual was made by consumers, or sorry, the people that produce stuff. So like, you have a front matter section where they talk about just like different details and design, and talk about some people that make stuff, Mavericks and Masters. And then you get into an alphabetical listing. I'll just use I'm not advertising, but just so you can see Longa and Sons, right? So I'll do it again, right? And so A through Z, it's all like that. And when I read the front matter, it's just everything that manufacturer released that year. So, and I don't know if it's everything or if it's everything they really want to advertise, right? Because, I think some companies pump out more stuff, but so they break the models down. If a watchmaker has an in-house movement, they talk about the in-house movements they made that year. And it's just by the numbers. It's like, dimensions, movement, crystal, cost at the bottom, right? So MSRP. Some of them say price available or on request. So you know what that means. And then at the end, they have all the movement manufacturers will list their movements that they want to highlight made for that year. And then at the end, they have a glossary and like I think it's called a Watch Wonders section where they just talk about different stuff. But this, it's great paper, great color pictures, standardized. There's some ads in there, but it's not like some of those magazines where like 50% of the magazine is advertisements. I would say maybe 5% of this magazine is advertisements. I mean, technically the whole thing's an advertisement, but it's not punching you in the face saying it's an advertisement, right? So I like this book because as I learn in my watch collection, I can go, number one, take a look at stuff. And now I understand where some homage watch brands are getting their inspiration. Number one, and I'm not anti-homage. I will say that if you're a newer watch collector and you don't want to spend a butt ton of money, go buy a homage that's close. And you can look at the specs on this thing here and see if the homage is even close to the specs, right? And say, okay, I got an idea. Do I like this? Do I like the way it feels? Do I like the way it wears? It's not exactly perfect, but you're not spending $5,000. You can go spend $500 on something and wear it for a couple of years. And you're like, yeah, I didn't really dig that. I like that. Number two, it just introduces you to a ton of brands you may not run across on your own. And it's alphabetical, man. Like seriously, like you could just go in there and be like, hey, let's just go through the A's today. And you'd be surprised. And it's cool. I think it's a cool coffee table book. And if you had like friends come over that know, because I think it's like anything else, right? Once you start getting involved in some kind of interest, your real friends start asking you questions, especially if you're kind of like us, where you're like deep dive and you want to talk about it. And it's just something that you can let them borrow, or they can look through when they're having a couple of beers, and you can point them in the direction of something that they might like, and then you can give them the note. I like the best part is, and we all know what MSRP doesn't really mean anything, I guess, but you can show them the price. And I'll give my hats off to the brands that advertise in this, because you know how funny it is about some other brands will like kind of be funny about their prices. Yep. But they're actually putting it in print and saying, look, this thing it should cost you $4,500. So if you were a stickler for that, you could just hold on till you find one for $4,500. You don't got to go play the up price, if it's possible. But it's just a beautiful book, great book, coffee table book. And you can learn a lot. And it's really short, digestible information. And the cool part, I forgot, top left-hand corner, usually they give you a brief history of the company. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the coolest part. So you get like a little bit of their story and where they're from and their whole MO. And then you can go into all the little pictures. And the pictures are great. They're clear, great, obviously high quality pictures, but good book.
No, it's really cool. I completely agree. I've been I'm a couple of years ahead of Jason in sort of the watch hobby. And I discovered this very early on in my day. And so I've been buying them since like 2017, but also gone back in time. And like you can go back to that's 2002.
Nice.
The first one came out in 2001, but I haven't been able to find that yet. But there's a secret. And Jason, if you want to buy old ones, but you don't want to pay like $150, the guy who writes it, actually, it's originally written in German. So there's a German version, which is then later translated into English. And you can get the German ones at about a third the price of the English ones if you're going back in time to get the old historic things. So when you open them up, it's the same. It's just a wall of the pictures and all the specs below. And yes, you might have to do a little bit of translation, but you'll find out what movement is in German and stuff like that. And you can fill out the whole library. And and one of the things that's fascinating is looking at the brands that were really big, like in 2007, and just don't exist anymore. There's
Oh.
a lot of kind of the internet is really good at telling you what is popular now,
Yeah.
but it's really bad at telling you what was popular like 10 years ago. And these sorts of that's where things like books actually really help. So yeah, I think great pick by Jason. I'd really recommend people try and get hold of it. It
Yeah,
can be a bit pricey though.
Yeah, I've often used that Wayback Machine, which if anybody doesn't know it, it's basically an archive of the internet, and you can go back on brands. So I've looked, especially for like CWC and a few other watch companies, where it's like that Cadbury's cream egg thing, isn't it? Whereas everyone's like, oh, this is smaller than the previous years, but it's only when there's like one person that's kept all of the Cadbury's cream eggs for the last 10 years. But the Wayback Machine allows you to go back. But you're right, Pete, it doesn't have every single year on there, but it is interesting on some of the watch brands to go back. Oh, how much was a Rolex, in 2007? And you'll find like a snippet where they've taken a snippet of the website from 2007 or whatever. But well, my next one here is not a watch YouTube channel. It's a channel called Side Projects, but this gentleman, Simon Whistler, I think he owns maybe 10 channels, and he used to do this great top 10 one. He does a really good one about history. He does a military one, and so on. So on this particular channel called Side Projects, he does things like 5 ancient mysteries we haven't solved, horrific ancient methods of execution, and so on. So he really goes into these subjects, and the reason I mention it is because I think single-handedly he did the best explanation of what the quartz crisis is or was. So if you're getting into watches, there was and you don't know much about, well, when did quartz watches come about, or how detrimental quartz watches were to the mechanical watch industry, where dozens, if not hundreds of brands went almost out of business within a very short period. A lot of the US brands were destroyed by quartz watches, Seiko's quartz watches, when they came out, similar to, a lot of these evolutions in technologies. He does the best version of the entire breakdown of the history of how that happened, and it's unique because it comes from a non-watch person. He doesn't often do watch content. He does more history stuff. I think for any new watch collector, if you've heard of the quartz crisis, or you're just interested in when quartz watches came about, have the mechanical watches always been popular or something like that, definitely highly encourage this video. I actually emailed him to see if he'd come on the channel because he did an awesome job of this. Has anyone else seen this?
I have not.
No.
I have not. I subscribe to him for mega projects.
Yes.
I love mega projects. It's really, really interesting. But I did not know he did something on the quartz crisis.
Sam, in that, did he talk about the impact of currency exchange problems at the time?
I don't. It's been a couple of weeks since I watched it. It's possible. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. But he goes into like Kosk and all sorts of stuff. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. I wonder if he does he talk to the fact that when Seiko won the chronometry trials, that's when the Swiss stopped it. They stopped having.
It's definitely worth a rewatch for me. I can't remember. I watched it. I think I watched it a couple of times. My overarching view was, wow, this is a great, because I think it's a unique perspective that from somebody that's into watches, we might add our little slant on it, or we might over explain certain elements, but he keeps it very kind of high level, and it's more on the actual history of it. So it's fascinating. So I'll leave a link in the description down below on that one. Todd, I think next one, yours isn't a link, is it? Did you have a book or something you wanted to show?
Yeah, and so this is a general. I got 3 books, and the reason I have 3 books, as I turn around here, is because they represent 3 different things associated with, watch collecting and watch repairing, and just trying to get more information on the hobby. And so this is I guess we could put a link for this. This is D.W. Fletcher's book. Go the right way. And this one's been out since the 50s. And it's a very thin book, and it's I'll show you. It's it's hand drawn
Oh, wow.
diagrams. Back when that's the way you did these sorts of things.
Oh, wow.
And so you could read this book very easily, and you could say something like, well, this is not modern, but the point is that watches really aren't modern unless you're talking about something like spring drive or something like that. Here's letting down the mainspring, how to do that manually. But it really gives you diagrams of tools. It shows you, the actual mechanisms, which are essentially unchanged for the most part. And it's just a really great little book that helps you kind of get introduced to the hobby. And it's not very expensive. You can pick this off Amazon. And it's just one example of, the type of resources that are out there. Now, the next one is a little bit different. This is something that Breguet does, and I think a lot of the other watch manufacturers do, especially if they're higher end. And so if you're just getting started, you're probably not going to get the right here, get the right angle. And so if you just go to Breguet's website, you can order these, and they're free. And I ordered it, and Breguet sent this beautiful card here. Thank you for your interest in our
Oh,
company.
nice.
Isn't this great? I mean, this is how to do business. So Breguet is one of the oldest watch manufacturers still in existence, if not the oldest, 1775. And so at the dawn of the American Revolution, there you go. Breguet was doing his thing. And the quality of the publication, if I can get centered here.
Let me do your solo. Oh no! Sorry, I removed you instead of doing solo. There you go.
Yeah, it's on par of the finest, like a Hodinkee magazine or what have you, and which, by the way, is another thing. Hodinkee is also a tremendous resource. But anyhow, you can go on their websites and see what's available. There can be all kinds of things. The last one I have, just as an example, and I got this at an auction. I found out this book is actually quite expensive. But if you're interested in a specific mark, this is the gentleman here, Don Sayers, who wrote 100. This is the 100-year history of Hamilton watch from '92, and I mean, there you go.
Wow,
very thick. This is a little dense. This is not something you just sit down and read. But he's got a lot of the original photographs in here. I'm just looking through it a little bit. But if you're interested in a specific mark, you can find these books, get them used for the most part. Or maybe there's some new books out on it. But just do research. And I'm a big Hamilton fan, so this was very appealing to me. If you're interested, for example, in Omega Speedmasters, there's the very famous book Speedmaster Only. Now those are a little expensive, but if you want to start looking at more vintage Speedmasters, it's a cheap piece of insurance to make sure you're starting. You're going to get the right watch. But are
there any plastic Speedmasters in there, Todd?
There are no plastic Speedmasters.
I had to beat Pete to the punch. I couldn't contain myself.
They are bioceramic.
They are bioceramic.
You got to get it right. Bioceramic.
I stand corrected.
Yep.
Jason, next one is you, and this is Watchbox reviews.
Oh yeah.
So I have some opinions on this, but I'd love you to present it.
Yeah, I got a long weaving road for this, right? So, as a veteran, I'll promote any veteran that's doing something good. But I think a lot of times, for anyone that's ever been affiliated in the military, or specifically in the military, you sit through a lot of training, right? Like you sit through training all the time, right? If you're lucky, there's a lab associated with the training. You actually get to do something. But most of the time, it's classroom and like I felt like I was a pretty good instructor. I got all kinds of good critiques. I don't care. I can get up in front. But like when you're teaching the same lesson the 1500th time, right? And maybe it's maybe it's Monday morning and you had a rough Sunday night or something, and you're in your mid-20s. Maybe you just bang the lesson out and get through it, right? And you're sitting in class, you're like, man, I just want to get outside. I want to do something. Well, I feel like Tim Masso, and I know he's a Navy veteran, but I feel like this is totally me guessing. I have no information, but his videos, I did a quick math average, like 7 minutes long on average, right? The longest ones I could find were like 15 minutes. But if you're a newer watch collector, you can go in, and yes, they're selling these watches. I get it. But we spoke about people who are methodical earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a method to these videos. There is tons of these videos. So number one, let's say that you were a newer watch collector and you got some cash to spend and you wanted, I would say, a more upscale piece. It's really, really hard to go find that in print somewhere unless you know where to go, right? Like one of the books that, like, unless you know a Todd or a Pete or Sam and you guys have this library behind you, right? And you're sipping bourbon, you can't find that book, right? Well, here, I mean, you can search it, and he had like 900 Rolex videos. So let's just say that you're really interested in Rolex. You don't got to buy them from Tim Masso, but I guarantee you can learn a heck of a lot in 6 minutes about a specific reference number Rolex, right? And then if you save that video to watch later, and then you go find it somewhere else, I guess, I mean, you at least would know, because he holds the watch the same way every video. He spins it around. He goes through everything that we talk about on a watch, right? He shows it to you. Anything past the standard, timekeeping complication, he discusses that. He talks about how it works. If there's something wonky with the watch that you got to do to not break it, he discusses that, right? And at the end of the video, it's like, if you want to buy this, contact me. I'm not going to say his information, but he says, contact me at my information and blah, blah, blah. And I just feel like the videos are short, sweet, to the point. You can get in, you can learn about something very obscure, and you can get out. And I feel like that's actually, if you did buy a watch from them, and I haven't, and I know there's all these kind of feelings about buying stuff on the quote unquote gray market or from an authorized dealer, whatever, or a separate dealer, it's definitely a resource that you can go in and learn about. I mean, it's just like the weirdest video library that wants your money but gives you a bunch of free information at the same time, kind of thing. And I can tell that he's been through cruddy training in the Navy, because there's no BS in his videos. It's just like boom, 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 and then you're out. It's great.
Yeah, no, I've often said this about Watchbox, that if you're interested in a watch YouTube channel that is just by the numbers, that is this, if a watch review is, this is what the watch is, this is why it's good, these are the unique things about it, and this is what you should expect to pay it. That Watchbox is it. He's covered almost every single base. The thing that I struggle with, and this is totally superficial, is I cannot get over the fact that he wears his sunglasses backwards on the top of his head. Like, I know he does it now as like a troll, because he even said that he did it, and even during the pandemic, even though he was in a studio on his own, he was still wearing a almost like a dust mask that by the end of it it was almost completely disintegrated, because he'd been wearing it. It was like just an industrial dust mask. So, and I know that he's talked about the sunglasses thing, but what I find so, because it's counter to how he presents it, because sometimes he's in a suit and tie, but his sunglasses are like backwards, and I've never seen anyone wear it. Maybe that's his hint. It's like a visual cue, but you're right. When I used to review watches at Bob's Watches, they would have some very obscure watches that I didn't know much about, and you can guarantee 9 times out of 10 that Tim Mosso's done a video. His watch knowledge is incredible across all sorts of brands. I know they struggled. They've tried to bring other people in to add the sort of the more like showbiz side of it. I mean, even TGV, they tried to bring on the channel. Federico, I think, as well, they tried to bring on the channel to try and add the bit more of the glitz and glamour. But really, it is him. Those things often, don't work out, because people are watching it for his incredible watch knowledge. And
I'm going to say something like, I don't know. I don't know about the Australian military, Pete, but I'll tell you what, in the Navy, every division has a dude like Tim Masso. There is a Tim Masso in every division. right?
Yeah.
And it just falls like, do you get them early in their career or do you get them later in their career? Because when I was a junior guy, I had a chief that was like this. It was just like, and I would go and look up in a manual to see if he was full of it. And I'd go to this obscure page and I'd be like, dude, how does he know? Like, how does he know this kind of thing? Right. And so I think that part comes across to me, in the fact that I don't know if it feels like he values my time.
Yeah.
He's not waxing poetic about what the watch means to him, because really, and we've discussed it a million times on this channel already, it shouldn't matter what that watch means to Todd, to me. That timepiece should matter what it matters to me. You know what I mean? And you get none of that when you watch this. It's like, this is what it is.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's funny. I actually didn't have Watchbox on my list, but that's because I'm happy finding those facts for myself.
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of like I'm the exact opposite of you there, Jason. I don't care about the facts. I can find those. I'm more interested in what someone thinks of something. So I personally don't find him particularly. Actually, funnily enough, when he's done interviews, he's much more interesting. I don't like the review things he does. But it is, you're absolutely right. I used him when I was looking for this watch, because I won't watch him, but if I want to know about a particular reference, I'll go searching for it, and all of the things that you mentioned, you go looking for, and do I understand how this works? And
he's just really technical, and I appreciate it. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen, they do it once a month, and I will plug them, whatever. But TGV and Mark Frankel do that. It's like a watch talk every month.
Yeah,
and it's so funny to watch these two guys, because TGV's all waxing poetic and it's all esoteric about the watch and tying into films, and Mark's like, I don't care. This is what the watch, boom, 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 what the watch does. And they can agree to mutually see the other, and they tell each other, like, I don't care. Like, TGV's like, I really don't care how it works. And Mark's like, I don't really care that Arnold Schwarzenegger wore it in an obscure commercial in 1978, in Austria or something, and it's the greatest back and forth. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll go with my next one, and we've got to give a shout out to Ricky and Dave over at Scottish Watches, and I think they're now maybe the second or third largest podcast after the Hodinky team. And not only is their presentation style awesome, they've got a whole back catalogue, but the interesting things are they're equal lovers of all watches across the spectrum. So they'll talk about Rolex. Dave's got a collection of Swatch watches. They'll have micro brand owners on as well. Very high quality podcast content, real insights into the industry. They went to Watches and Wonders, which I think only Adrian at Bark and Jack and maybe Time and Tide and a few, and literally a handful of other YouTubers can say that they've gone. And also they have a lot of ties in with some of the manufacturing. They've got a lot of interesting interviews, and the interviews are also oftentimes they're asking some very probing questions about the brand. They don't let the brands off lightly. If there's something about the brand that they want to find out, they'll ask. And they are not only is it that interesting, but they're also extremely generous with their time for YouTubers like us as well. So they'll, Ricky will come on live streams. I've been on live streams with Dave and Ricky have been on my channel, but also behind the scenes, answering questions that I've asked them on WhatsApp and things like that. Very, very generous with their time. It's a great podcast, really interesting. It's twice a week, so you definitely get that hit, and they're very consistent with it as well, which is I struggle to be consistent with our podcast, but yeah, real interesting insights into the watch industry, knowledge and stuff like that. I don't know if anybody else did anybody else listen to Scottish Watches?
Yeah.
Yeah, I only listen to podcasts I've been on, so yes.
I didn't know you'd been on Scottish Watches. Have you?
Oh, a million years ago, back when we were both. It was very funny because they were experimenting with doing some YouTube stuff as well. And for a brief moment in time, there was a kind of a three-way race going between Scottish Watches, myself, and another another YouTube channel that's vanished. Those guys gave up, and we were kind of competing for subs, and obviously I didn't win that race.
Yeah, he
But
was
yeah, like-
recently. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete.
Oh yeah, so way back when I think it was like episode 50 or something, they did. I was on it.
Oh, okay. Because I was one of the ones I recorded on the airplane I just got off of was, which is another good one too, which is Watchfinder. Mr. Hands, and they had, I think it was Ricky they had on, and they, where he just does the podcast, and it was very interesting because it went into the history of how they got started and the fact that he really wasn't interested in watches at all. He thought Rolex was like a single watch.
Yeah.
Like there was a Rolex that you bought. And so he
Nice.
goes into
Isn't Rolex just a single watch?
We've only got 10 minutes left. We can't start
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah. If you go to a Rolex dealer, they have a single real watch
Oh,
in the display case, right, Sam? I mean, the rest are whatever they call those
exhibition models.
exhibition models, right? No, but I agree. They are a great resource.
Yeah, they are really good. They are really good. Well, I've got one more, but Todd,
Sure.
did you have any others on your list, or?
No, that was it for me.
Cool. Pete, did I cover everything you wanted to go over?
I'd probably like to throw on one more podcast, if I may.
Yeah.
I threw a link in the chat. Hopefully you found it. It's an Australian podcast, so I feel like I'm being a little bit patriotic. It's called OT, the podcast. Don't ask me what OT stands for. I have no idea. It's presented by a guy by the name of Felix Schultz and Andy Green. Now, Felix Schultz is a name that will pop up all over the place. He writes for The Collected Man. I think he used to write for Hodinkee. He writes for Revolution a lot. So he has a lot of fingers in a lot of horological pies, and has a lot of contacts. And that comes out in the way he talks about things. Again, I suppose, it's one of these people who I really like, these people who know a lot but don't get jaded by it. And he's in that same position of, so he's very much the watch journalist. And then Andy Green is not by definition, not by training or profession, a watch guy, but he knows watches and he loves watches. And together, it's a really good podcast. Again, a lot like Scottish Watches, but whereas that's very much from the enthusiast side, OT kind of matches that, coming from a similar vein, but from a watch journalism professional side.
Yeah.
And I think if you, and that's why after you mentioned Scottish Watches, these guys leapt to mind. If you kind of listen to the two of them, you get a really sort of the left and right nut of arc on talking about watches.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I've not heard of them. That's one that I'll definitely add to my list. And you made a good point as well. We haven't mentioned any of the websites, the journalistic websites, but ones to check out are definitely Watch Pro, Hodinkee, of course. The A Blog to Watch is another great one. Revolution Watch, Monochrome Watches, Fratello's Watches. There's all sort of amazing websites. We've focused on sort of more media content. Well, the last one that I've got, and this is another friend of mine, and this is Ben from Ben's Watch Club. So Ben, he's actually helped me out a lot on the channel, and the reason that I mention him is if you're new to watch collecting, but you haven't got a big budget, maybe you're interested in what represents values, because there is a ton of watches below $100, and I think also this below $500 watches is quite a difficult thing to find YouTube videos about, because there's certainly some YouTubers that will review $300-400 watches as if they are Rolexes, or ones that are off like AliExpress, or watches that have obscure Italian sounding brand names. I won't mention any specific ones, but you see them on Instagram, and it's really difficult to work out, wow, are these like movement watches, Daniel Wellington? And you're like, wow, is this good quality? And you'll go on some videos, especially movement that has a number of non-YouTubers that review their watches, and you'd think there's even that one that is where they said movement is better than Rolex, and it's a real. I think that's probably
Alpha
the
M or whoever.
Oh,
he did.
yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah,
do you remember
but our boy Teddy got after that guy.
He did.
Have
Well,
you seen that video?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
and Ben interviewed him as well.
Yeah.
Ben got him on. Ben actually got him on the channel, and that's what spurned the Teddy video. So
Yeah.
Ben called him out
Yeah.
first. I forget the name of the gentleman. Nor do I want to advertise him because
That's why I like
ridiculous.
Ben though. Ben is the only one I've found for like that price range that throws the BS flag when the BS flag needs to be thrown.
100%.
Ben throws it, and he does it
Right.
professionally, and it's not like some child throwing a tantrum. Ben is like, look, even though this watch is 275 whatever, it should be better or something. You know what I mean?
This is exactly where I was going to go with this. Not only does he no, totally agreeing with you. Not only does he go to your point, Jason, not only does he say, well, yeah, this watch is $200, but it's still not good value.
Yeah.
Or he'll talk about, hey, this is an Instagram brand. These are not good value, or this. And then he'll go into which is excellent value, things that are alternative. And he also does mini documentaries. He does a lot that shines a torch up to watch YouTubers as well, which I find is interesting. And he's fascinating videos. So if you're because I think it's very confusing, that sub $500, sub $200, if you're collecting in that, it's a minefield really, and he certainly helps guide the value watch collector through this journey. So he
was one of the first guys I found. Yeah, he was one of the first guys. I probably on my government channel feed have more views of his stuff than probably a lot of people, because it's just he's funny.
He is.
You know what I mean? Like he very easygoing approach to explaining something, and he tells a really good story, but hits key points. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like he's just really well done.
Right. And his spaghetti scametti video that he put, it's hilarious. It is so good.
That's anyone that takes the time to actually make a scam watch for himself of the video,
prove the point.
Dude, level 1000 trolling, man, it's the best.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating. And also another one who's like very generous with his time for other YouTubers like me. I often chat with him. He's helped me out a lot with because he owned a fashion channel before. He's also very savvy on YouTube in general, like how to frame videos, how long to spend on certain cuts and things like that. And also he really is interested in YouTube as a service in terms of the algorithm and stuff like that. So yeah, an absolutely awesome channel. Well, any last points in the last 2 minutes here?
No.
Yeah, we covered quite a lot of subjects. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back to live. Now, we think the next live will be the following Sunday. We're not too sure whether we can do a Tuesday show yet because of work commitments, but we appreciate it. Thanks for all of your comments, even though we've not been able to see them, but hopefully you got the replies to your questions. We really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk Live.